All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you here. Wanted to mention before we get started, the chat is open. Already see a couple of folks in there. Please, leave your questions. We'll discuss them throughout. If you don't have questions, thoughts, comments, anything you'd like, we'd love to hear it. I'm going to go ahead, before we do some introductions, we'll let some more folks join so that Jeff and Donnie can sit here awkwardly while we wait. We love the beginning of a webinar, right?
It's not awkward. There's nothing awkward, right, Donnie?
Well,
I'm the king of awkward. Yeah.
We'll kick things off with a poll just to get a gauge of where everyone is as we get more folks on board. Would love to hear it. Keep voting, keep participating. We love the participation. It makes these events so much better. All right.
So, okay.
I think while we're waiting, why don't we tell a funny story about RK?
Okay.
That's a great idea. And I bet you have some good ones, Donnie.
No, I was going to ask, are there some funny stories about RK? By the way, I'm actually proud to see RK. Like, is this your second house? Is that right?
Yeah.
Second house. So,
I know.
all right. So, funny story about RK. You want me to tell a funny story about RK? This is kind of embarrassing.
Oh Lord.
Should I say that? No. Hardest conversation I've ever had with RK would be, what would you think it would be, RK? Hardest conversation you and I have ever had?
Oh, maybe I've blocked him out probably.
With lots of therapy, I've forgotten it all. No.
Yeah, probably. I mean, way back in the day, it's probably the time when you said we're going to put on a conference and we're going to.
That's exactly what I was going to say when we were talking about CO2. RK thought I had.
We're going to do it ourselves. Yeah,
we're going to do it ourselves. Yeah. No. So
it's
good. Yes. And so I will. You nailed it. Yeah. The funniest conversations I've had too with RK. One of them was when I said that we're going to do the conference, and I think RK thought I was crazy and doing drugs. But the crazy part, most likely doing drugs. At least they were legal, I think. So anyway, yeah.
Tylenol does not count. Hey, RK, I don't think the poll is actually published.
Okay.
In the chat, I'm hearing that they cannot see the poll. We have a great poll too. It's a fantastic poll. Where are you in your leadership journey?
Okay, is it active now, folks?
Oh, there we go. I see people coming in.
Participation. Appreciate it. Love to hear it. All right, well, we'll go ahead and kick things off. I want to introduce our speakers. Many of you already know them. We have Jeff Davis, our CEO at Coalmarch, which is a premier marketing and technology solutions provider focused on helping home service businesses grow, scale, and succeed. With over 25 years of experience in revenue and operational leadership, Jeff has a proven track record of driving growth, streamlining operations, and leading high-performing teams across the technology and service sectors. Welcome, Jeff. We also have Donnie Shelton joining us. He's the owner of Triangle Home Services and former CEO of Coalmarch, hence the stories from years past. He's an innovator with a proven track record for helping pest control and lawn care industry leaders overcome strategic growth challenges. Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about your background? I know you're newer to this group. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got to your current position as Jeff at Coalmarch, we call you.
Jeff at Coalmarch. I'm not new Donnie. That's not what they call me, Donnie. But we do kind of favor each other, and we do have a lot in common. My journey, I came through WorkWave. I ran a platform called Quantech. It's now called Hire by WorkWave. We went through some acquisitions. One of them was through Omaha. Hi, Omaha. Somebody in the chat is from Omaha. And then we ended up with WorkWave, and I've kind of wound around. And about a year ago, we started talking seriously about Coalmarch moving out of WorkWave. We jumped on the opportunity. Said it's a great operation, great people, and let's move forward. So I guess we're only a few months into this, but we're moving pretty quickly. I want to say before you get to Donnie for his introduction, this is the guy that literally wrote the book on this. Just so we know,
gosh.
he literally wrote the book on this. So you all have an audience today. We've all read it. We train on this book. This is his book.
There we
Donnie,
go.
welcome. We're happy to have
Oh
you.
boy.
Donnie,
Yes.
let's
Yeah.
hear the secrets. Same for
I
me.
don't know if I have.
Give us a little bit of your background and your story.
Well, I guess the background would be is I started Triangle back in 2006, which obviously there's lots of, I mean, my gosh, I can't believe it. So my daughter Marin was born that same year. That's how I keep up with the age of the businesses. She was born. The nurses who helped deliver Marin also helped me pick the logo for Triangle. And so we started Triangle in 2006, grew it pretty quickly, grew it online. Um, I did it with internet marketing. We grew extremely fast internet marketing. And I was working with several agencies. And by the way, my light's going to go on and off, and it may stay off, but that's fine. Um, the I just kept getting frustrated with working with a lot of digital marketing agencies, and so eventually I had this idea that maybe we should go and get our own. And that's how I got introduced to Coalmarch. Coalmarch was working with us beforehand. I thought they were a fantastic company. That's how I got involved with Coalmarch. And there's a long story there. I was also with Workwave. Well, before Workwave, it was Real Green, and had a great run at Coalmarch. And now I'm back at Triangle. And background, everyone knows. I mean, I was in the military. I've got 4 kids. Life's good. I mean, this industry's been fantastic, and so I've enjoyed. I've been a beneficiary of a lot of wise people who've helped me along the way over many, many years. And so hopefully I won't screw any of that up in this webinar. So I'll try not to anyway. So
Love it. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on and humoring us. Maybe we'll crack a few jokes along the way.
sure.
Awesome. So to get us started, we have our poll here. Still several of you haven't submitted your poll. Where are you in your leadership journey? Looks like the majority are heavily involved in the day-to-day. So we'll cater to a lot of those types of responsibilities in this webinar today. We'll talk a little bit about delegating. So put in your final submission so we know exactly how to cater the content to you guys. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop our poll here. And we're going to move into our first topic for the afternoon. We're going to talk a little bit about our mindset shift. So what was the biggest mental shift you all had to make when you moved from more of a technician to business owner? Donnie, of course, I'll start with you.
Okay. It's kind of funny because for those that are on the webinar, they send us these questions beforehand, which is a little different from me. Normally we kind of make it up as we go, but I started writing the answer to it, and then I looked at the next question and I started laughing. So what I wrote down was the biggest mental shift was making this transition from working in the business to working on it. And then the next question is why do so many owners get stuck in that? And I thought that was pretty funny. And I mean, the only way I know how to explain this is really explain how I got started. When I started Triangle, it was me and one other technician, and we literally started out of my garage. And after 2 months of operating, I hired my first, I don't want to call her CSR, but her name was Pam, and she worked in the office. And I was very, very much involved in the day-to-day. I treated the homes, I took customer calls, I'd go out on callbacks, and a lot of those days I wouldn't get home till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And so it was just kind of one of those things when you own the business. I mean, the buck stops with you, and jobs have to get done, and there's making the sausage, right? And you're the one that's responsible for doing it. What happens though is, while that is absolutely a necessary part, and if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, this is really bad, I'm working in the business, don't let anyone tell you that. There's definitely a time and place for that. It's more about what's your vision. I mean, there's a lot of folks in this industry who are 1 and 2 man operators, and they make a great living, and they enjoy what they do, and they're running their route, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's more about, if you want to scale the business, then you have to make this transition from doer to leader, and realizing that, you're an engineer, not a hero. And oftentimes, we get addicted to the chaos. If you're an entrepreneur, I used to tell Rachel, I tell RK, in fact, I told all people at Coalmarch, and if you're listening to this, you can certainly resonate with this. And I'd always say, business owners are crazy. We're all crazy, right? and that's the reality, right? I mean, we're all crazy. I mean, a lot of times we thrive in chaos, and oftentimes it gets kind of addictive to be a hero, right? I mean, you can solve a customer problem, you can make things happen, but ultimately you need to see your role as an engineer, not as a hero, meaning that your job is to engineer systems. Your job is to engineer the right environment where others can take your vision and make it happen. And that's a hard thing to do, because oftentimes it requires you developing more skills. And what I mean by that is, like, as an engineer, I have to think through, well, it's easy to sit down and say, well, this didn't happen with a customer because, well, Donnie's, I can't use bad words here, but Donnie is not very smart and he didn't know how to handle that customer. Well, that might be true, but who's responsible for teaching Donnie that, right? And so when you back up as an engineer, you think, well, what is our training, and was it clear, like, what needed to happen, and was that person trained, and what was the failure point? Because it's a lot easier to blame a person than to look back at yourself and say, well, maybe I didn't have the business set up properly to do that. And I don't want to run off the rails here. You asked me, like, what's the biggest mental shift? And I think that's really it, right? It's transitioning from hero, from doer to engineer, and really looking at your business as ultimately these smaller systems that come up to this one massive system, if you want to scale. And by the way, if it's not your thing, again, there's lots and lots of people who run these 1 and 2 route companies, and that's perfectly fine too. So
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah. So why do you think so many owners get stuck in the business instead of working on it?
I think fundamentally they don't understand their role. When you're a technician, when you're a manager, um, your job is really to get things done. And typically you're a hard worker, and that's how you got there, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Those are all great skills to have. Um, but I will tell you that when you're an owner, and when you get stuck, in the business versus working on it, it's because you don't take the time. No one else in the business is getting paid to drive where you're going next. And so what happens is that you get so stuck in the day to day, you get so stuck in getting things done, you never take the time to back away from your business and figuring out where you're going. And that's a hard thing to do. It's like working out. It's like doing a few other things. Like, it's important, but it's not urgent. And so when it's important, we all know that we should do it. There's tons of things that we should do, but it's not urgent, right? Whereas a customer calling, or payroll getting done, or even making payroll, those things are urgent. So it gets very, very easy to 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 be so consumed with the urgent, you forget the important. And I'm guilty of this. And the way that I solved it, and I don't know if I talked about this in the book or not, but if you've spent some time with me, I've certainly talked about it. Early on in the business, when I realized this was what was going on, I took 2 hours every morning. And from 8 to 10, everyone knew in the office, I shut my door. I was not taking texts. I was not going to make phone calls. And I told everyone in the office, I'm like, look, if someone's on fire and there's no one else in the entire company that can put that person out, then you come and get me. But for 2 hours every morning, I'm going to work on the business, and I'm going to work through, like, I would go through marketing. I would go through, whatever it is that we were dealing with. But it was, I understood that my job was to engineer a business. My job was not to solve every single problem in the business. And I will tell you that infrastructure, the getting stuck is that it's very easy for your folks to make you the answer person. Like, there's a problem in the business, and they're going to be coming to you and being like, hey, what do I do here? What do I do here? What do I do here? And when you have processes, when you have procedures, when you've done training, then what you can do is you can teach your staff how to think. And what I would say is, for me, I would always answer a question with the question. I'd be like, what's the process say? Or what does the book say? And then people would learn over time, well, I probably should check this out, because Donnie's going to ask me, what are we going to do here? What are we going to do there? And they don't come to rely on you to solve all their problems, because that's not your role as a leader. If you're going to work on the business, you've got to free yourself from the business. And that would include freeing yourself from making every single little decision that has to be made in the business. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It
You
does.
mentioned a little bit earlier about things that are important but not urgent. And that's something that you have very much pushed throughout the years, and something that has been ingrained in Coalmarch's business. And I thought I'd share in the chat a link to a resource that talks about the priority matrix. It's the Eisenhower matrix, and you sort of put things in those different boxes. So if anyone is familiar with that, would love to hear. But I did just drop that link.
And I would say quadrant 4 in that matrix, you should never be in, right? Which is not important. It's not urgent. So that'd be things like, so anyway, all right. It's a great matrix.
So let me add just one thing to that, and talking through what Donnie's talking about. What you're mentioning is that it's when you become the bottleneck. And if everything has to run through you in the business for a decision, you are the one stopping the business from running at that point in time. That's how you know you've got an inflection point, and you have to step away. For me, it's always been about two things. It's about the system of the business. So the policies, procedures, the technical systems that run the business itself, and the people, and the trust in the people. So like, we've got some comments in the chat talking about wanting perfection. That just says, in a certain extent, we don't have trust yet, like in the individuals that are running the business at that point. When I've gone to launch tech startups off to the side, usually I'll start with the systems and not even the product. What is the best platform to deploy this on, where I can literally have this thing run to where I'm not worrying about AR and AP and the basics and customer service. Like, how do I get that platform in place first? Then the product falls into place. And that's easier in tech than it is in services. But those things are important. And I see a lot of people that have done this before. They kind of have that playbook ahead of time, where they walk in with a system ahead of time. And it goes a lot smoother for them too.
Yeah. So what's a belief about running a business you had early on that you've completely abandoned? Maybe Jeff, anything that comes to mind?
Oh my gosh. Beliefs on business that we have completely abandoned. Your hustle is scalable. You can go out and you can just outwork everyone else, and keep going. It's not like you're limited. Your hours are limited. You just can't outwork competition. You're gonna have to outthink them at some point in time. So it's, goes to say that hard work is not all you need for success. That was one of the things, you kind of work out. You're taught that from a young age, right? Like, just outwork everyone else, outgo. But there's just that, again, there's that inflection point where the systems and the process and the vision all have to collide to kind of take you. And that's where it's hard. You got to step off that cliff, move it forward. I don't know. What do you think, Donnie?
I'm going to answer this question with a story. It's going to be terrible. And I mean, listen.
Donnie, tell a story? Never.
One belief that I had to abandon early on. So my background is, I was in the military. I went as an enlisted guy. So I went through boot camp, and I spent 4 years enlisted, and I went back in as an officer, and I went through OTS. And when you become an officer, you get nothing but just a ton of leadership training. And when I started Triangle, I was to the brim with this leadership training. Like, I had gone through years of leadership, military leadership training and those types of things. And and listen, I'm not saying any of that stuff is it's not valuable, but it works in the military, meaning that there's particular type of person that the military attracts, and they train them a very specific way, and there's standards they have to make. And so the way that you lead them is very different than the way I lead now, or the way that I lead it even when I started. And so, I was pretty naive when I first started. And so the belief is that you can fix or develop some people, and you just simply cannot do that. And that sounds terrible to say, but it's absolutely true. When I first got in business, if someone was having personal issues, or they were having an issue with this, I thought, oh, I can develop that person. And I'm not saying they can't be developed. So don't misread what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I hire based on raw talent now, and I hire based on values. Those are non-negotiable. And if someone doesn't have those, you're never going to give that to them. So the reality of it is that, when I think one that I actually had to abandon was this belief that it didn't really matter where someone was at. I could I could change them, right? I could bring them around. And that is true if they have, you know, your values that you're looking for. Here we talk about, go rise, growth, ownership, respect, integrity, service, excellence, right? We look for those things, we hire based on that. But if they're missing one of those, you're not going to develop that. And I learned that the hard way over and over and over again. I'm a slow learner when it comes to that, and it bit me. But I will tell you now that I don't. I waste no time and I mince no words with that. Um, so anyway,
No, it's so true, and it really leads us into our sort of next section, which is talking about letting go and scaling. And in order to do that, you have to have the right people, as we know. So, I guess switching gears, what's something you wish you delegated earlier in your leadership journey?
who's that
Um,
for?
either one of you guys. Maybe Jeff, if you have something, then we'll kick it over to Donnie.
I can jump in. I think, especially when you're starting up in smaller businesses, you kind of try to do everything and bootstrap it on your own instead of delegating to professionals. So, I mean, obviously, we run a business that does this, so this isn't just a plug for Coalmarch, but marketing is a good example, right? You try to do everything on your own on the weekends, and it's tough. Or accounting and AR. This goes back to what I was talking about in the systems and setting those systems up to go. I will caveat that by saying we've been talking a lot about AI, and not to turn every single presentation we do into AI, but that has changed what you can scale. There is a lot that you can do now that you couldn't do before. You had to rely on expertise. But those are the biggest things from my journey was trying to understand the functions that I really need to be focused on. Like, I knew that sales and revenue into the business is something that I was not going to leave to someone else. I had to do, but there were other functions that I would try to do everything and all things. And I'm just not an expert at all things. Unlike Donnie, I'm not an expert at all things. And admitting that is the first step, right? I would say that's the first step. So I don't know. What do you think, Donnie?
So I wrote an answer to this, and I'm going to summarize it actually better in a principle, which is something I wished I'd have delegated earlier were really my strengths. My background is computer science. That's what I got my degree in. I love marketing. And early on in the business, I spent a lot of time doing all of our technical work, and I spent a lot of time doing our marketing, which took away from time that I needed to be running the business. And so for me, when I'm really good at something, it's hard for me to delegate it because I want it done a certain way. There's a certain level, and I'm not telling you that you should accept mediocrity. Okay, don't misread what I'm saying, but it's very difficult to let go of things that are pet projects. We used to have this software called Back Office, and it was called Forgely. And I know RK, she's probably cringing when I say this.
But I love that platform. I have a
Yeah.
soft spot for that one, Donnie. I love it.
But I mean, I remember early on, like I was heavily involved in that stuff, and and there is a place for that. But for me, when you think about when you run a business and when you're truly the owner, you're truly the CEO, you just can't get in these rabbit holes. And these pet projects, they're very tempting. It's like candy. It's like, yes, I know I could do that, and even though you know that you can do it better, the more difficult thing is to train someone else to do it better, if for whatever reason. Like, because again, we all have our strengths, and I'm not saying tech is my strength, but I had a very extensive background in it, and so it's hard for me to delegate those things, and I wished I would have done it sooner. I really do. I think it would have saved me a lot of time, and it certainly would have saved me a lot of frustration, because the fact of the matter is that it's the whole 80-20 rule. You'll drive yourself crazy for the last 5% when it really just doesn't matter. And it just wastes a ton of energy and a ton of time. And it's like, just delegate it, move on, so anyway.
And I can only imagine if those are things that you're good at and you enjoy, you're spending too much time on those things.
Yeah.
Well more than is needed, because it's enjoyable.
So, and you'll see that on your leadership team as well. I mean, is there someone who likes spreadsheets? Is there someone who likes marketing? You know what I mean? Like they will pigeonhole into something they really, really like. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, hang on, I need you here. Cause this, so anyway, you're going to say something, Jeff. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, I think there's another question, and this is probably a question we could take offline, but why not ask it in public on a webinar that'll be, republished over and over. So with Forgely back office in particular, and that was where I came from. So Quantec was a hiring platform company. That's what we did going into it. I think there was another lesson in there that I've kind of seen. It wasn't Coalmarch's thing. Coalmarch was a marketing and services organization, and it was never built to run software and be a software platform. Those are two completely different structures. And to me, that was kind of the lesson that I looked from the outside when I came back and I'm talking to you and I'm learning more about the company, was you tried to kind of do something that was really outside of your wheelhouse. And I see some similar things where people will dilute and get into a lot of side businesses and home services and kind of follow that path. And maybe it doesn't fit within the operation and it's not perfect. So I'm just curious if you had any thoughts on that about, I'm totally down a rabbit hole right now myself.
Well, no, I mean, you see it a lot. So I'm involved with several peer groups, and it's very easy to see in owners. They'll be involved in some customer service thing, or they'll be involved with their phone system, and they'll be involved. And meanwhile, their cancels are like freaking 35% a year. You know what I'm saying? Or they're not making any money whatsoever. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, your job is to take care of the business. And they're like, but no, I've got, so anyway, my point, going back to your original question, RK, is, delegating things like being very, very clear on your role as a leader and being very, very clear of what it is that you're doing and avoiding the temptation. And listen, I am guilty of this. So by me saying this, if you think I've got it all figured out, I've gotten better as I've aged, but certainly I am so guilty of this, of taking on pet projects and taking your eye off the ball of what your real role is as the leader, which is ultimately driving the growth of the business and the culture, people and everything else that goes with that. So.
No, totally fair. So time for another poll. How confident are you in your ability to scale your business? Let's see, will it come up here? Are you guys able to see?
I see a poll is active, but I don't actually see a poll. Maybe I'm not supposed to be. I don't know.
Let's see. Technical difficulties. Maybe I need to remove our question here and add our poll. There we go. How confident are you in your ability to scale your business? Let's see. We're going to switch gears to more of scaling. While the poll is going on, let's talk about some systems or processes that have helped you scale beyond just yourself. Donnie, we'll go back to you.
Well, okay. So before I say any of this, there's no right answer. I think, and here we are, we're in the dark again. This slide is hilarious. I would say, the reality is that there's several systems out there. There's Scale Up, there's eMyth, there's Traction. I mean, name whatever flavor that you'd like. We currently at Triangle use Traction. I very much like that as kind of a business management process. And so I think the main thing is first things first, is that you do need to get some sort of system in place that you follow as a business to bring some order and some organization to the chaos, because business is nothing but chaos and it changes all the time, which I think is one of the reasons I like it. But start with that. That certainly was one of the things that, when I first got started was, I had to get systems and processes in place. And I use Traction now. Before that, I used eMyth, but some sort of business management system, because listen, there's nothing new under the sun. People have grown and built businesses in the past a lot smarter than I am, and probably that I'll ever be. So there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Business at its core is the same no matter what you're doing. So find one of those, whatever that is. I mean, whichever one you like. I mean, I think there's probably even more than Scale Up, Traction, and eMyth. And then the second thing is, and this is the harder one, is execute, right? I cannot tell you how many times we would go to a conference. I saw this at Coalmarch when I was there and we were doing CO2. I've seen it in peer groups. I've seen it, in myself sometimes even, which is where we commit to something and we get excited about it, and then a squirrel runs across the road and we completely forgot about, you know what I mean? Like the follow through and the execution piece. Because listen, I put down here Massey. If you're familiar with Massey Services, they're a massive company out of, no pun intended, out of Orlando. They're a great company. I think they're really well ran, and they open their doors. I've had several peer groups down there. They show you all their processes, they show you all their procedures, and they don't, they don't hide anything whatsoever as far as their strategy. And it takes me back to, I mean, I think Marcus is on this webinar, so he's going to cringe when I say this, but John Wooden, right, or even Vince Lombardi, they're kind of famous coaches. I've used this example several times, but they trained their team so well, and they had open playbooks. They had the simplest plays that you could ever think of. And by the way, John Wooden, greatest coach, NCAA coach, 10 championships in 12 years, and Vince Lombardi, the NFL is named after him, Lombardi Trophy. But my point is that they were not doing any rocket science, right? There was nothing that they were doing that was super tricky. They just followed through on the execution side. And so I think for me, it's been find a process, commit to it, and then execute. That's really, there you go. I did forget Nick Saban, but Nick Saban's got another one there. It's one I talk about a lot too. So, so yeah, that would be for me. Yeah.
Well, I did want to, I know you mentioned peer groups, and I wanted to give a little plug. Your PMP Industry Insiders group has peer groups. So if you are interested in joining a peer group, I'll put a link here for you guys.
Wow.
Anything you want to mention about the peer groups? I know I'm sort of putting you on the spot there.
No, listen, obviously we do peer groups through our podcast. I mean, I don't, obviously we would love for you to join us, but don't feel like you have to join us. There are several that are out there. For me, I would just advocate that you join a peer group and that you develop a set of peers that you're talking to. Obviously we have a system. You don't have to use that. You're more welcome to go somewhere else. I mean, I think there's Strategic Coach, there's Associated, there's several out there that do this. But ultimately, when you own a company, I remember when I became an officer, I remember the discussion that when we graduated, the general gave us, he goes, you're not as good as you think you are, and your jokes aren't as funny when people laugh. Meaning that, when you're a leader, a lot of times you get full of your own stuff. And when you get into a peer group, it's great because you get a nice dose of reality, and you get folks who are truly kind of your board of directors, and they can see things that you can't see. They're probably going to give you unfiltered feedback that you would never get in your company from people who report to you. And it's a great way to learn, from the experiences of others, because I can almost guarantee you, no matter what you're facing, there's probably someone else who has faced the same situation and has overcome it. So it would absolutely help you go a lot faster. So.
Totally agree.
Mm.
So going back to systems and processes, Jeff, I definitely want to give you a chance to answer this question because it is such a crucial part of scaling. What has helped you? I know it's a huge part of us at Coalmarch.
Well, I get the benefit of what Donnie implemented so well with you all at Coalmarch. So honestly, my job right now is not to break it. So EOS was a big one from like a system standpoint, of execution system standpoint. I'm moving into a little bit more scaling up, but they're all kind of the same thing, same flavor, same thing, execution. I look at it kind of from a technical systems perspective. I keep going back to the technical systems in looking at this, and there are certain platforms that are ready-made that really can help take it off. So in our business, ClickUp really runs the back office of the operation, and it adheres to the systems in place and the philosophy of the company, and follows the process, and really it holds everyone accountable. It holds me accountable. RK gives me tasks in ClickUp to go do, and that's how I manage the things that I need to get done. It's very, very effective. And in walking in, we had to build our own marketing function from day one. So this is all new. Like, this platform is new. Everything is new that you're seeing. We had to do this.
This is why I don't know how to use the polls yet.
Well, it's going pretty smooth, honestly. It's a great platform. And look, Donnie was impressed. I saw when the link clicked up.
I'm impressed.
It's great.
Impressed.
But there are certain things that you just get as part of your playbook, and you pull in. HubSpot is mine. So, we walked into the marketing and sales universe, and I'm like, this one can take us from 0 to 60 quickly. I know how to use it. Let's go. And from those technical systems, you kind of learn which ones to embrace and which ones you've been frustrated. I will probably never implement Salesforce.com again. It's just outgrown. It's a little much. It's a monstrosity. People love it. People have careers out of it, but we all have kind of our technical systems that we walk in with, and we're like, I know which ones fit for the size of the company, and we're not quite to the size where we need that behemoth yet. But there are other ones that we know the playbook and we know what to use.
RK, would it be okay if I just add one thing?
Oh yeah.
So, we're talking about processes and procedures, and there is one caveat I want to give to the audience, which is that EOS, scale-up, system procedures, they're all tools.
Right.
They're all tools. They're not the Bible, right? I mean, they're not like, it's funny because sometimes, here, and I think there's some folks from Triangle on this, and they're probably gonna laugh when I say that. Here, we don't call it traction, we call it detraction, which means it's Donnie's traction, meaning like, I will use traction so long as it's doing what I need it to do. But I am not I'm perfectly fine in calling an audible and saying, we're not doing that, even though the rule book says A, B, or C. Ultimately, your job is to take care of customers. Your job is to make sure that the business operates and functions. And that means sometimes that you're gonna have to make an audible call, but you shouldn't. Sometimes people get so committed to a tool, they get so committed to a process, they almost forget to look at the forest for the trees, right? They forget the intent behind those systems, right? The intent behind that is to be consistently excellent. It's not to follow the rules or enforce the rules. There's a time and place for that, but ultimately, if you're efficiently becoming a smaller company, or you're pissing off people along the way, you have missed the mark, right? And your processes and your procedures are not, they're not doing the intent of what they should be doing. So just don't forget the intent of that, right? They're very, very helpful, but they're not, they're there to help you get to a place. They're not there for you to worship it. Does that make sense? So
Okay. True. True. I want to remind our audience, of course, if you have questions for Donnie or Jeff, please put them in the chat. Happy to incorporate them throughout our webinar. But if not, I'll just keep feeding you all sorts of questions. And feel free to stop me too, Donnie and Jeff. But it's sort of switching gears back to the people side of things. When building leadership beneath you, what qualities do you look for first? Donnie, you mentioned a few things when it comes to hiring. Maybe walk us through that a little bit deeper and some of those values you rattled off.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, so specifically leadership qualities that I look for, or when I'm building a leadership team beneath me. There's really a few things. One is that I look for what I call the ability, and what I mean by that is the leader ability. There are some people who don't like confrontation. And by the way, I don't want to give the impression here at Triangle that we have fist fights and people are bickering and arguing all the time. Although I wouldn't put it pat, no, I'm just kidding. That has never happened here. That I would talk about on a webinar. No, anyway, so but when I talk about the ability, a leader's kind of a weird bird, and I don't want to overemphasize or over embellish what a leader does, but your job, truthfully, is to get people uncomfortable. It really is. And that's a hard job, So if you're someone who really likes to be liked, if you're someone who really seeks validation in others, and you can't build relationships, so sometimes you have people who are too nice, and then you have some people, and you can probably blurb this out a little bit later on, but you just have real assholes, right? Who care about themselves and they don't care about anyone else. And both of those people are going to fail in a leadership role. Now, is there a place for this person? Probably, but not at Triangle, right? Is there a place for this person? Probably, but maybe in the frontline role at Triangle, not as a leader, right? And so I think, first of all, is the leader ability, meaning that, I always talk about sugar and spice, right? Someone who really, really have good relationships, and people know that they care about them, but they're also not afraid to tell people, like, look, this is where I need you to be, and do it out of a place of love and caring, not do it out of a place of like, well, I really care only about myself, because people will see right through that. So there's that ability, the sugar and spice. And then the other part is the ability to really look at themselves and look at the business from a strategic perspective. And I know that sounds trite, but it's absolutely true. You would be amazed at someone who may get promoted to be a leader, and everyone loves the title, right? We all want to be a manager. Everyone wants to be a leader. And then you get in the role and you realize what that means. Listen, people are crazy. And I will tell you, there are times that you're listening to something, you're like, I can't believe this person's saying this to me right now. But I mean, that's what you do. But ultimately, you have to have the ability to build strong relationships. You have to have the ability to influence people. And if anytime, you're having to resort to authority, you're having to resort to other means to control people. I just don't think that makes for a good leader. And so I'm looking for people who know how to do that. I'm looking for people who understand, we are here to run a business, and they know how to work with people. And that's a hard thing to find, because oftentimes they're not the best technician. They're not the best, call center person. They just have that ability. And it's again, it's kind of rare. It's not an easy one to find. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's what I look for. I mean, obviously there's the values and those types of things, and I can talk through that more if you need me to, but I'm just talking about like core, like this is what I'm really, really looking for. That's initially, what I need to see that from that person before I put them in a leadership role.
It's funny. Arcane actually were talking about this yesterday, and generally most companies that I've been at try to promote the top salesperson to the sales leadership position. Almost always a failure. Those skills do not translate for exactly what you're saying, right? They're just, it's not the same person. It's not the same attributes. It just doesn't work. I'm curious, Donnie, I've got one more follow-up question for you on this. How do you judge those qualities? So when you're looking at it, how do you, in an interview process, how do you go about uncovering the qualities that you're looking for and figuring out whether or not they can be uncomfortable, the sugar and spice scenario? Like, what is there using a test?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
So all right, so I don't have a process. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't believe that for a minute.
Okay, so a few things. First of all, for me to hire someone in at a high leadership role from an interview, that's not going to happen. If you look at on my leadership team now, I had relationships with them all at the very beginning. I knew them well before they ever came to the company. And so I knew who they were. I think one of the greatest traits that you can see in a leader is one who understands and has command of their own ego. Now, I'm not saying ego's bad. Ego's not necessarily a bad thing. However, if it's all about you, that's not going to make you a good leader. And it's very easy to see when you talk to someone, like who's taking credit when things go bad. How well are they able to articulate the failure on their part? Are they reflective, right? Is this someone who can look back and take their part in it and understand, like, I don't want to reference, extreme ownership, but they kind of do. And so oftentimes just in normal conversations, you can get a feel for what kind of leader they are and what you're buying in on. Because if you listen, a dead giveaway of a dud is someone that comes in and says, my previous company, the leader didn't buy into me, and the company didn't do this, and you know what that means, right? In 6 months, that's going to be you. Right? You're going to be the company that has all those problems. And so I would say, for me, of course there's a process that we look for, but ultimately, what am I looking for? I'm looking for someone who has command of their ego, and they take extreme ownership of what they're responsible for, because ultimately that's going to be the person that I can trust. They're not going to be the butthole. They're not going to be the person that isn't afraid to have conflict, right? Conflict's a good thing, but it's only a good thing when you have the relationship. And I mean, I'm going to pick on RK a little bit here, but I will tell you, I've sat in on meetings with RK and, RB and Frank and Kristen and we would have some epic fights, but it was never like, oh my gosh, I can't be your friend anymore. Right. Or, oh my gosh, and that is the kind of, that truly is the kind of environment that you want at your company, because you want people to be able to tell the truth. Right? You can't change unless truth is on the table, and you can't change unless people feel comfortable in calling you out, even as a leader, right? I mean, if I ran around and people were afraid of me and I ran in fear, I mean, it's only a matter of time before people are going to stop talking to me. And I'm going to keep making dumb decision after dumb decision until eventually either they leave or we run the business off the road. So that to me is that kind of quality where you have command of your ego, you understand how to have good conflict, and you understand your roles and you know how to do it. You know how to operate around people. So sorry for a long-winded answer, but you asked
No, it
a
was
pretty
good.
complicated question.
That was my follow up to it, and it's funny we had one of those conversations yesterday that you're describing right now. So that's good. It means we're on the right track. Thank you. That's confirmation. Appreciate that, Donnie. I will add one little thing to this too. It also depends on where you are in your business. So if you're in a high growth trajectory and you've got to move fast in a certain area, getting people that have a quality that have done it before and been in a playbook that aren't as raw, that you know that you don't have time to train. I think a lot of times it's really where you are as a business. Are you looking to mold somebody and grow them and looking for the qualities first? Or are you looking for somebody who's literally come in and done it before? Working with a lot of very high growth, private equity backed companies, there are different times, for those different moves. And sometimes you've got to just bring people in that know how to do it. And you've got that trust from day one to be able to execute.
So
Sure.
Cindy in the chat said thank you for all the gold nuggets. But she also asked if you incorporate any type of personality test for new hires or maybe. Awesome.
We do. We use, for us, we use the Colby system as part of Traction. And it's not necessarily a personality test. It's more about how you work kind of test. And, I'm so glad. I'm hoping that Sharon's not on this call because there's 4 categories. I can't remember all of them, but it's essentially like where what it tests for is how you work and what you're most comfortable with. One of them is like risk and, like how fast were you a quick start or a high fact finder. And I'm going to tell you, there are people who drive me just crazy. High fact finders, slow starts, which is the exact opposite of me. And guess who I surround myself with? People who are high fact finders and slow quick start, because I need that. Because if I had people around me that were like me, we would go so fast we would run the wheels off the company. And so essentially, the reason that we use that is because number one is I'm not going to put them in a role where, if you have a high fact finder in a role where they need to move fast, they're not going to succeed. Or even if they do succeed, it's going to be very short-lived because the job's just going to wear them out. And likewise, if you put someone who is not a high fact finder, like I give you an example. This sounds crazy to me now, but I had this dumb idea years ago when I first got out of college that I wanted to be an attorney. And if you know my personality, you would know that would be a terrible job for me because I am not a high fact finder whatsoever. I would lose every court case ever given to me because they'd be like, would you think about this? I'm like, nope. but my point is like, those tests for me are more about, is this person really good for this role? And it's a lot less about their, perfect. Marcus, help me out here. Fact finder, follow through, quick start, implementer.
I was going to call out Marcus because I think Marcus and I, and if, for those of you who are listening, Marcus is a member of Donnie's team. And I think Marcus and I have had a conversation very similar to this about the slow start and fact finder, and maybe commiserated a little bit
about how they drive me crazy. so
Marcus,
yes.
That's true. Sorry to blow up your spot, but
no, it's perfectly fine. But I mean, at the end of the day, these tests are, in my mind, are more for about, is this person going to gain energy from this role, or is it really just going to wear them out? And the other thing is that you need a lot of diversity on your team, because you don't want people who are all high fact finders because they won't do anything. And you don't want all quick starts because they won't look at anything and they'll just go off feelings, right? I mean, and so you want a good blend. And so it's not a personality test per se, but certainly, and there's several out there. There's like Briggs. I mean, there's, I don't know, the different colors, blah blah blah. For me, the Colby one has been the most helpful, and we've done several. And it's because I understand, like, okay, this person's not trying to just irritate this crap out of me. This is legitimately like what they need. And then it just takes me to a level. By the way, for the record, my spouse is a high fact finder, slow start. And we did, and then we both got it done, and I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And you will find, and if you look for it in life, like, people just naturally tend to gravitate towards those opposites. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But we're not doing a dating show, so there you go. Anyway.
So I will add a little bit to this. Quantech was actually built on a personality and operating style assessment. The whole platform was predicated on it, and it was part of the application process. 120 questions. So when the labor market turned, it was hard to get somebody in a janitor position to fill out 120 questions, but we tied it to retention. You could actually take certain types of personalities and certain operating styles. The same thing. I am a high fact finder, just so you know, but we would go on an actual to potential range. It was a little bit different, but I'm a big fan of taking a system like that. Maybe not necessarily a personality test, but how they operate, a working style assessment. Wonderlic is one that's really good. And incorporating that in your business and your application process, just because you will find, and finding out who fits into your business and who can operate within a team is crucial. So I'm with you. I'm a big fan of those type of platforms.
One other one that I've liked to use in the past, and I think this came from you at some point, Donnie, within the EOS system, the get it, want it capacity to do it. We're figuring out if someone is in the right seat within your business. And I'll drop a link here as well. Because that's always been one I've really loved. And it really makes you analyze a team member and figure out, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it specific to that role?
So let's talk about that, because that's a really important point. And there's several things I could talk about with this, because, if you've gone to any kind of business conferences, I think even more than AI, one of the things that's oversold and overbaked, and you just hear over and over again, it just drives me crazy, is culture, 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 blah, 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 right? It's all about culture. And by the way, that's not incorrect. But when you add, a lot of times we throw around terms and we hear stuff, and it's like, what does that really mean? And I remember when traction first came out, everyone's like, oh, traction. I'm like, and I was very reluctant, probably because of my own ego, but I was very reluctant to even read the book, because I'm like, okay, it's the flavor of the week. Here we go, another business system, blah, blah, blah. And if you stay in business long enough, you'll see these come and go. And I thought this was going to be one of them. After like, kind of humbling myself, maybe 2 or 3 years later, I decided to read traction on a flight, and I'm flying. And there's a section in there, there's a chapter in there that talks about culture. And they introduced this tool of get it, want it, capacity. And it was the first time I'd ever seen anyone take this idea of culture and turn it into a system. And if you're not familiar with get it, want it, capacity to do it, essentially you take everyone where they're currently at and then their current role, and you grade them, plus or minus. Did they get it? Did they get the role? Do they want the role? And do they have the capacity to do it? And here's the really critical part of that exercise. You do it quarterly, because that changes. That changes a lot, right? I mean, I remember back years ago, I had this person who started working for me, and they were amazing in their seat. They were great. They were just killing it. And of course, the business started growing, and we got bigger, and things got more complex. And that capacity and that want it kind of started waning, and eventually we had to part ways. And so, rare is the person in a business who typically grows with the business. And it's hard, like when business is never static. And the thing I always like to say, and I know this, you guys are probably going to cringe when I say this, but we're in a car climbing a hill with no brakes. You're either climbing or you going back. There ain't no sitting. right? I mean, you have no brakes. And so even if you think you're holding steady, well, the market is still expanding, which means you're actually going backwards. And so, this whole get it, want it capacity to do it, for me, is a fantastic tool for you to step back and effectively evaluate how well is this person performing in this role. And it's a system where you can do that, because listen, I am very guilty of being super committed to a person and completely blinded to the fact that the capacity is gone, right? Or completely blinded to the fact, well, they don't really want this role anymore. And listen, that get it, want it capacity, I know when I say that and everyone hears that, they think they know what it means. You should look in the book and see how they define get it, how they define want it, how they define capacity to do it, because they even talk about like they can't wait to get out of the bed in the morning to go do their role. That is want it. And so to me, it was a way for me to incorporate the kind of culture into the business that I wanted. And I had a system for doing that, because I didn't know what the hell that meant. Like, what's it? I mean, obviously there's a feeling, but culture, like, am I going to go through and say, well, yeah, our culture is good. And depending on who you're talking to and the day of the week and the time where our culture is great. I mean, where our culture is bad. Well, how about I definitively measure that? And, the get it, want it capacity to do it is a great tool for you to make it more tangible, and ultimately to make it more actionable, because I promise you, it's going to show you how you can improve your business. It's going to show you changes that you need to make. And sometimes those changes are going to be hard. So I got stories with that, but I'm not going to share them now. So.
Oh, it's so true. Well, we have about 3 more minutes. This has been a great conversation, and I think we could continue to talk for hours on this topic. But I would love to sort of leave us with one final component. What's the best investment you have ever made in your own growth as a leader? And you may have mentioned many of them already today, but what is that best investment you've ever made in your own growth? Jeff,
Is that from, I was going to say, start with Jeff, or?
Yeah, we can start with Jeff.
Start with me.
Okay.
I'll be quick on this one. I don't have a lot of peer association groups in the industries that I came from. So me cultivating that group of peers and honestly mentors, and keeping that group fresh is by far the best investment. Better than the MBA, better than the certificates and the books and the reading. Those relationships and that advice is absolutely priceless.
Love it.
What do you think, Donnie?
I struggled with this question, especially with the word best, because I'm like, my gosh, how do I? Okay, so the very first thing I put on was having kids.
Me too. I said that one too. I said beyond kids. It's right there on the screen.
I'm telling you right now. You know what? The reality of it is, and I mean, listen, if you don't have kids, but my point is, the reason I say that is because if there's any character flaws that you have and there's areas that you need to grow, I promise you're going to learn it as a parent. Your kids they're going to figure it out, but I put down, here's what I put down is the first thing was, I did say having kids and trying to raise them the right way. And it's easy to have kids, right? Raising them is a totally different thing. The second one is kind of what Jeff just said, which is, relationships with people in the industry. I said at the very beginning of this webinar, I am the beneficiary of really, really good mentors and very kind people. And I am so grateful that they took the time in their career when I was a lot younger, that they took the time to have discussions with me and help develop me. The third thing is journaling, actually. I think as a leader, I spend a lot of time I have to spend a lot of my time thinking, and I don't have a lot of time for that when I'm at work. And it's easy for me to get in a state of reacting to what's happening and not really thinking what needs to happen. And so I journal every day. I'm not telling you that's what you need to do, but certainly when I get in my journal, it forces, I ask myself questions that are hard questions. And if anything, I never go back and read it. It just forces me to think. When I have to think in writing, it makes me think a lot deeper, and it forces me to think out versus in, on the chaos and the fires. The fourth thing I wrote down was winning the day. If you spend any time with me at all, I have a spreadsheet. I call it Win the Day, and they're habits, and I hold myself accountable to it. I got in shape doing that. I've built businesses doing that. I've trained all my kids on it. That just that habit of winning every single day, in some area of my life, has made a big impact on me as a leader. And I feel like, it's helped me grow as a person, because listen, leadership development is personal development. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Okay. The reality of it is that you cannot, you can't become a great leader and have a bad character. Just like if you look at really, really good leaders, you're going to see that they're into personal development. That's what brings their leadership developed across. And so those for me have really been kind of the core things that I stick to. And I'm not telling you that I'm a great leader. Okay. I'm just telling you that for me personally, finding good mentors. You can do that in peer groups. You can do that wherever. The second one is journaling. And then the third one is winning the day. And I've seen the thing here about the copy of the spreadsheet. I'm happy to share it. But, or at least a copy of it. But I mean, ultimately, it's all about your habits, and it's all about your own journey as a business owner. Listen, as an owner, the business is going to take on your personality, and you absolutely are going to be the lid. And so, which means that, there's an opportunity there, but there's also a responsibility. And the further along you get, and I'm not going to wax poetic here or anything like that, but you're going to realize that, you'll hit financial goals, and you'll finally get to a point in life where it's like, hey, I'm set. And then it just becomes fun to play the game. It becomes fun to watch and help other people. And again, we're not going to, cue up some Fields of Gold song here or anything like that, but I truly enjoy that part of what I do, and my ability to influence others to do the same. And so, so for me, those things, those kind of critical habits have helped me along the way. So.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I really appreciate both of y'all's time. Before we leave, before we head out, I want to have one final poll, just to get more insight into what you guys are looking to hear more from us on. What topics would you like for us to cover? We do these webinars twice a month, and we want to make sure that they are centered around topics that you care about. This was a leadership focused session, but if you're interested in a marketing topic, our next webinar is June 26th at noon. SEO isn't dead. You're just doing it wrong. So please join us. We'd love to have you. Again, thank you, Donnie. Thank you, Jeff. I might just have to push for a part 2 of this session. This was great. Really appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a wonderful Thursday afternoon.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Donnie.
Bye.
Yeah.